With Artemis 1 up there and the 50th anniversary at hand of Apollo 17, there's a new book out titled Apollo Remastered. That's our Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. With us is the man behind it, NASA expert and historian Andy Saunders. Hi, Andy.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
A pleasure to meet you. The complete title is Apollo Remastered, the Ultimate Photographic Record. And this really looks like a labor of love. Tell us about it.
Well, it is. It's taken about 10,000 hours, in fact, of processing. So for almost 50 years, everything we've seen from the Apollo moon landings in terms of photography has been based on duplicate film. The original film, once we got back from the moon, that went into this frozen vault in Houston, in Texas, in Building 8 at Johnson Space Center to preserve it. So everything we've seen is based on duplicates or copies of duplicates or copies of copies and so on. And at each copy, there's a degradation in quality. And that had always really frustrated me that they use the best equipment, the best cameras, the best lenses. We should be seeing them in a better state. And it didn't really make any sense, but that's the reason. But that original film has finally made it out of this frozen vault. NASA scanned them to an incredibly high resolution. And in applying digital processing techniques to those, we can now view the Apollo missions as never before. So I started that project about in 2019 properly.
And something like 35,000 images involved here to go through?
Yeah, there are 35,000 that they took. A lot of those were taken kind of automatically from the sim bay of the service module, kind of on a timer, but a huge proportion were handheld. So it covers every mission. There's actually a chapter on the pre-Apollo missions that helped pave the way. So Mercury and Gemini. And then we go through every mission from Apollo 7 through to Apollo 17. Everything that landed on film during those missions I've assessed. So it's the 35,000 Hasselblad negatives. We'll call them negatives. They're not entirely negatives, but we'll call them negatives. But also every frame of the 16mm DAC, the data acquisition camera. So this was like a movie camera, like an old style cinefilm camera, people may remember it as. So, and that's where I apply this unusual stacking technique of separating out all the separate frames, stacking them on top of each other, consolidating them, and we can pull out detail that you can't see in a single frame at a time, up to hundreds of images potentially stacked and processed. And that's actually what got me started on the whole project. Was I applied that technique to the Apollo 11 EVA, born out of a frustration that there's no image of Neil Armstrong on the moon. You know, since childhood, I've had this obsession with Apollo, and I wanted to see Neil Armstrong on the moon, this absolutely pivotal moment in human history, but we've never been able to because he held the camera. So people may not realize that all the photographs we see are actually Buzz Aldrin. And that's just, you know, you think in this day and age, or when we go back to the moon on Artemis and the first woman walks on the moon, imagine if, you know, they get back and they say, can we see a picture of the first woman on the moon? And sorry, we took a picture of everybody else and the rocks and the spacecraft. But so it's unthinkable, really. But they took one camera and one magazine, and Armstrong held it for most of that EVA.
And I guess some families can relate to that because a mom or a dad who does all the picture taking at the holidays is never in the picture.
They don't exist. Yeah, exactly.
So tell us about the process here. Were there specific images besides the hunting for one of Neil Armstrong that you focused on?
It was, I mean, to select, I went through all 35,000 and it is a lot, and it was a huge project, but I had to do that because the concept is this is the ultimate or definitive photographic record. So I didn't want to take on an enormous project, get to the end and half do it and think, you know, what if I've missed something? So I had to assess them all. And in terms of what ended up in the book, you know, anyone that's tried to put a photo album together from the favorite holiday will appreciate it can be really hard to narrow it down. And although this is a huge book, there's over 400 full page images in it, which is more than I think we've ever seen before in a book like this. It's a lot, but there's a lot of incredible photographs. You know, the subject matter, it's just inherently stunning. But I was trying to uncover anything that was new. There are images of historical significance. There are those types of images that just instantly convey the awe-inspiring nature of human space exploration. They just hit you. There's panoramas in there, so we've stitched several of the photographs together to produce these fold out huge panoramas, and they help us to appreciate the scale and the grandeur of the lunar landscape. So there are lots of types of images in it, and I also had to select images which help tell the story of each mission and the whole program, because they're in chronological order. So as well as producing and enhancing and narrowing down the images, I then researched every photograph to pinpoint exactly when it was taken, who took it, what is it we're looking at, what were the astronauts saying at the time when they were taking these photographs. And like I say, following the imagery along with the captions tells the whole story of the whole Apollo program.
Well, I lived through this. Judging from what I'm seeing here, you did not. So, and you kind of hinted at it. What was it that drew you to this?
Yeah, I was born in 74, so 2 years after Apollo 17. So you're right, I don't remember it, but I almost feel like I have experienced it, and more so having gone through all these images. The enhancing what the imagery is a way that I can get closer to it. And in terms of what sparked that, I mean, it goes right back to childhood. I was just obsessed with anything that could fly, actually, and rockets were this ultimate flying machine, like a lot of little boys, I guess, like rockets. And in terms of the moon, I remember looking at it through just a small toy telescope, again, when I was very young, and being amazed at how that two-dimensional disc suddenly became 3D. It became a world that you could potentially go and visit in a rocket. And then when I learned that people had done that, that just is what really started my fascination. And then as I got older, it's just that childlike fascination has always been there, but now it's more just an appreciation of how incredible an achievement this was. And I'm just fascinated with that whole, I'm quite jealous that you lived through it, this golden pioneering era of exploration.
From the very first, judging from the way you're speaking, I don't think you grew up in Houston or in Florida here, but so the fascination grew even on the other side of the pond, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's a worldwide thing, isn't it? I mean, thankfully the US achieved it, but of course it's kind of for humanity. It's we as humans had the ingenuity to go and achieve this incredible feat. So I think it touches everybody, really.
Right. So in addition to a book, this is also an exhibition currently in Glasgow?
It's currently in Glasgow. Yeah, it started at Royal Albert Hall in London, and then we moved it to Glasgow, and then it will move to the northwest of England. There's a small one at Jodrell Bank, which I don't know if you've heard of. That's a huge radio telescope in Cheshire, which actually tracked Apollo 11 to the moon and tracked the Russian at the same time. So it's providing information to NASA. So there's a nice link there with Apollo. There's another exhibition in the United Arab Emirates, and hopefully we'll try and get them over to the US, of course, at some stage.
That would be very exciting. Now, younger people may not grasp fully the excitement and drama of the Apollo missions. You've recreated it certainly for yourself and for all of the readers here and the attendees of the exhibit. What are your thoughts about recapturing those feelings, that gripping excitement through Artemis and maybe what comes after?
Well, I've ever since I learned that we'd been, I wanted to see it live for myself. I wanted to live through that and know that there's someone up on the moon. Now that it's finally come around, and I've been waiting over 40 years, always thinking in the next 10 years, in the next 10 years, in the next 10 years. And finally, it's here, of course, having had the test flight that's there now. I've been putting some images up on my Twitter and social media of the Earth and the moon, and it's just incredible. But of course, when there's no human taking that photograph, as amazing as they are, I think it's only when we go back on Artemis 2 and a human holds a camera up to a window and takes a photograph of the whole Earth, potentially from the distance of the moon, that will just touch everyone on Earth. There will be comparisons made to the Blue Marble taken on Apollo 17 and say, look, these photographs are 50 years apart. And of course, the Blue Marble was a big catalyst for the environmental movement. So I've no doubt when we go back that'll be what better for the environmental movement than to have images taken by humans of our Earth amongst the blackness of space? And we'll all have the opportunity to look back at ourselves, I think. So I'm looking forward to it. Whether digital photography can truly capture that essence, that warmth that the film did. There's something kind of quite romantic about the fact that you had to wait for the astronauts to get back from the moon with the film to develop it and, see what it was like on the moon. When we go back with Artemis, it'll be live streamed. It'll be 360-degree field of view, VR enabled. It'll be incredible. But will there be almost too much of it? And digital can look a little bit clinical. And there's just something, like say, about the warmth of film that for me, I don't think it will surpass those images from Apollo.
Sounds like you'd like them to bring a couple of cameras then, one film.
It'd be nice to take a Hasselblad, actually. Yeah. Whether they will or not remains to be seen.
And you may be seeing landings beyond the moon as well, won't you? Hopefully.
That's the other thing. I think, of course, with the Apollo missions, the public started to lose interest quite quickly until Apollo 13. And then they were reminded, actually, this isn't routine. And then by kind of 15, 16, 17, again, interest started to wane. So I am concerned that when we go back to the moon, that could happen again. But this time, it is in a more sustainable way. There are plans to do more and more, such as the Lunar Gateway, such as having a permanent base, going to the South Pole, and as you say, potentially going on to Mars, which I think that really will help keep momentum going and keep people's interest.
Terrific. Well, the book, once again, is Apollo Remastered. Andy Saunders, thank you so much for spending time with us.
So, thanks for having me.